Jake Morrison sat in his office on the 47th floor of the Galactic Council building. The view from his window showed the massive space station that had been his home for the past 3 years. Ships from hundreds of different worlds came and went every day. The sight used to fill him with wonder, but today it just made him tired. The message from Earth had arrived 2 hours ago. Jake had read it 5 times, but the words never changed. Humanity was leaving the Galactic Council. All human representatives would return to Earth within 7 standard days. No exceptions, no delays, no negotiations. Jake picked up his personal communicator and called his team. Lisa Campbell answered first. She was the head of human scientific research on the station. Her voice sounded confused when she heard the news. "Are you serious, Jake? We're really leaving?" Lisa asked. "That's what the message says. Pack everything. We leave in 6 days." Ryan Parker, the military advisor, joined the call a few minutes later. "This doesn't make sense," he said. "Why now? What happened?" Jake looked at the official letter again. Earth Command says the decision is final. They want all humans off Council territory by next week. The 3 of them met in Jake's office an hour later. Lisa brought coffee, which was one of the few Earth products that other species actually enjoyed. The irony wasn't lost on any of them. "I've been going through our research files," Lisa said. "We need to delete everything before we leave. Earth's orders are very clear about that." Ryan frowned. "Delete our research? That doesn't sound right. We've spent years on some of these projects." "Those are the orders," Jake replied. "Everything goes. Research files, technical data, even our personal logs about other species." Lisa pulled out her tablet and showed them a list. "Look at this. We have to remove all human technology from Council systems. That includes the quantum communicators we installed last year and the medical scanners in the hospital wing. Half the station uses those scanners," Ryan said. "The Valek delegation specifically requested them after their ambassador got sick." Jake shrugged. Not our problem anymore. The next few days were strange. Jake expected other council members to ask questions about humanity's departure. Instead, most of them barely seemed to notice. The Zephyrian delegate, Veltar, made joke about humans finally understanding their place in the galaxy. The comment stung, but Jake didn't respond. High Counselor Thexan from Valek stopped by Jake's office on the 3rd day. The tall, blue-skinned alien had always been polite but distant. "Ambassador Morrison, I heard rumors about your departure. Surely this is just a negotiation tactic?" Jake finished packing another box of files. "No, Counselor, we're leaving. The decision is final." "But why? Has someone offended your people?" "We can arrange a formal apology." Jake looked up at Thexan. The alien seemed genuinely confused. "It's not about any single incident. Earth has decided that Council membership no longer serves human interests." "I don't understand." "Humans have always been valuable junior partners in Council affairs." The word junior hung in the air. Jake realized that Thexan honestly didn't see the problem with that statement. "We'll be gone by tomorrow," Jake said simply. Thexan left looking puzzled. Jake went back to packing. Lisa spent her last 2 days quietly removing human technology from Council systems. She had helped design many of the station's most important systems over the past few years. The quantum communication network that connected all Council worlds used human-developed relay technology. The medical bay's diagnostic systems were based on human research. Even the air recycling system had been upgraded with human improvements. "It's amazing how much of our stuff is built into this place," Lisa told Jake as they worked late into the night. "Earth knew," Jake replied. "That's why they want everything removed." Ryan was having his own problems. The Council's defense coordination system relied heavily on human-developed translation protocols. Different species used completely different approaches to military technology. Human programmers had spent decades creating systems that allowed all these different technologies to work together. If we remove our protocols, their fleet coordination is going to fall apart, Ryan warned. Earth's orders, Jake said. Remove everything. On their last day, Jake, Lisa, and Ryan walked through the station one final time. The hallways buzzed with activity as usual. Aliens from dozens of worlds went about their business. None of them seemed to realize that the humans were leaving forever in the main council chamber. Delegates argued about trade disputes and border issues. Jake remembered spending countless hours in that room, trying to find compromises that would work for everyone. The humans had often been the ones to suggest solutions that other species could accept. Think they'll miss us? Lisa asked quietly. Eventually, Jake replied, they stopped by the station's central computer core. Lisa input her final commands, removing the last of the human-developed software from council systems. She worked quickly and efficiently. Years of her work disappeared with each keystroke. There, she said, clean break. The shuttle to Earth arrived on schedule. Jake, Lisa, Ryan, and 12 other human staff members boarded with their personal belongings. Everything else stayed behind, but it wouldn't work for much longer. As the shuttle pulled away from the station, Jake looked back one last time. The massive structure looked the same as always, but he knew that appearances could be deceiving. In a few hours, maybe a few days, the council would start to understand what they had lost. Any regrets? Ryan asked as Earth grew larger in the VIEWSCREEN. Jake thought about the question. He remembered the excitement he had felt when humanity first joined the Galactic Council 15 years ago. Humans had been so eager to prove themselves worthy of membership in the galactic community. They had worked harder than anyone else, contributed more than was asked, and always said yes when the council needed help. But they had never been treated as equals. Always junior partners. Always the ones expected to do the difficult work while others took credit. Always grateful for whatever scraps of respect they received. No regrets, Jake said finally. The shuttle entered Earth's atmosphere 3 hours later. Jake could see other shuttles coming and going from the spaceport. Hundreds of humans were returning from council worlds across the galaxy. Scientists, diplomats, traders, and military advisors. All coming home. At the spaceport, Jake met with Director Helen Roberts from Earth Command. She was the woman who had signed the order for humanity's withdrawal from the council. How did it go? She asked. Quietly, Jake replied. They barely noticed we were leaving. Helen nodded. That will change soon enough. Our analysts estimate they have maybe 2 weeks before major systems start failing. And then? Then they'll learn what human partnership was really worth. Jake thought about High Counselor Vexan and his talk of junior partners. He thought about Veltar's jokes about humans knowing their place. He thought about 15 years of being undervalued and overlooked. Good, he said. 3 weeks had passed since the humans left, and Counselor Vextar was starting to worry. The Mantarian Collective's morning reports were filled with problems that seemed to get worse each day. Communication networks were failing across 17 different sectors. Trade routes were shutting down. Even simple tasks were becoming difficult. Vextar stood in the Council's main technical center, watching engineers from 6 different species try to fix a quantum relay station. The massive device had been working perfectly for years. Now it sparked and made strange noises every few minutes. What's wrong with it? Vextar asked Chief Engineer Zolkin. The Terran engineer looked frustrated. His 4 arms moved quickly. As he checked different panels, we don't know. The main systems are intact, but the control software keeps crashing. Every time we fix one problem, 2 more appear. Can't you just replace the software? Zolkin's scales changed color, which meant he was embarrassed. That's the problem, Counselor. We don't have the source code. The humans installed this system. but they never gave us the programming details. Vexstar felt a cold sensation in his stomach. What do you mean they never gave you the details? We asked them several times over the years. They always said they would provide documentation later. They were too busy with other projects to write everything down properly. The quantum relay made a loud buzzing sound and went completely dark. Half the lights in the technical center went out. How many of our systems depend on human-designed software? Vexstar asked quietly. Zolkin checked his tablet. His color changed to deep purple, which meant fear. According to this report, about 60% of our critical infrastructure has human components. Vexstar left the technical center and walked quickly to his office. He needed to contact the other council members immediately. This was becoming a serious problem. High Counselor Nexon was dealing with his own crisis. The Valak home world had lost contact with 3 of their major colonies. The communication satellites around those worlds had stopped working 2 days ago. Repair teams couldn't even reach the satellites because the navigation systems on their ships were malfunctioning. How? Is this possible? Vexon demanded. These systems worked perfectly for decades. His aide, Sub-Counselor Realm, looked nervous. The technical teams say it's related to the human departure. Apparently, many of our systems used human-developed components. But the humans were just junior partners. How could their leaving cause such problems? Realm pulled up files on his screen. I've been reviewing our records. The humans provided much more technical support than we realized. They maintained software, updated security protocols, and handled system integration between different technologies. Dex sat down heavily in his chair. Get me Director Fellon from the technical division, now. 20 minutes later, Director Fellon stood in Nexon's office, looking uncomfortable. The elderly Valak had been in charge of council technology for over 30 years. Director, I need you to explain exactly how dependent we are on human technology. Fellon activated a holographic display that filled half the room. The image showed the council's technology network with different colors representing different species' contributions. Nearly half the display glowed with the blue color that represented human technology. This is impossible, Exxon said. Humans have only been council members for 15 years. Yes, but they were very active, Fellon replied. They volunteered for every technical project. They fixed problems that other species couldn't solve. They integrated systems that weren't designed to work together. Exxon studied the display more carefully. The blue human markers weren't just scattered randomly. They were concentrated in critical areas. Communication networks, defense systems, medical equipment, even basic life support on many stations. Why didn't anyone tell me about this level of dependency? Fellon looked embarrassed. We didn't realize it ourselves until they left. The humans never made a big deal about their contributions. They just quietly solved problems and moved on to the next project. The holographic display flickered and went out. Emergency lighting activated in the office. That's the 3rd power failure today, Fellon said sadly. Meanwhile, the economic crisis was spreading throughout the galaxy. Ambassador Morthen of the Crystalline Hegemony stood in his empty trade center, looking at reports that made him sick. The Hegemony had built their entire economy around selling bioluminescent art to human colonies. Humans loved the living sculptures that changed colors and patterns over time. Now, with humans gone, there was no market for their art. Other species found the bioluminescent sculptures boring or even disturbing. The Hegemony's trade income had dropped by 80% in just 3 weeks. What are we going to do? Asked Trade Minister Kylara. We have warehouses full of art that nobody wants to buy. Morthen didn't have an answer. The Hegemony employed millions of citizens in art production. Without the human market, most of them would lose their jobs. Similar problems were happening across the galaxy. Deception Union had specialized in producing luxury foods that only humans seemed to enjoy. The Corvan Empire had built their weapons export business around human demand for defensive technologies. Even the mighty Altarian fleet was struggling. Because they had sold most of their old ships to human colonies, Dr. Zefari, the Council's chief xenobiologist, made a discovery that shocked everyone. She had been reviewing scientific research from the past 50 years, trying to understand why so many projects were suddenly falling apart. "This can't be right," she muttered, looking at her computer screen. Her assistant, Dr. Poland, looked over her shoulder. "What did you find?" According to these records, humans were involved in 47% of our major scientific breakthroughs in the past century, but they only joined the Council 15 years ago. Maybe the data is wrong? Dr. Zefari pulled up more files. "No, look at this. Before humans officially joined the Council, they were working as research assistants and technical consultants. Many of our greatest discoveries had human fingerprints on them, but they let other species take the credit. The evidence was overwhelming. Humans had contributed to cancer research that saved millions of Valek lives. They had helped develop the agricultural techniques that ended famine on Zephyrian worlds. They had even assisted with the terraforming, technology that allowed the Mantarians to colonize hostile planets. Why would they hide their contributions?" Dr. Poln asked. "I don't think they were hiding anything," Dr. Zefari replied. "I think we just never bothered to notice." She remembered dozens of research meetings where human scientists had quietly suggested solutions to difficult problems. Other species would take those suggestions, develop them further, and publish papers without mentioning the human contributions. It had seemed natural at the time. Humans were junior partners. After all, now Dr. Zefari realized how foolish that attitude had been. The humans hadn't been junior partners. They had been the driving force behind much of the Council's scientific progress. By the end of the 4th week, the situation had become critical. Emergency sessions were called on dozens of worlds. The Galactic Council building itself was running on backup power because the main energy systems kept failing. High Counselor Vexan called an emergency meeting of all remaining Council members. Only about half of them showed up. The others were dealing with crises on their own worlds. "Fellow counselors," Vexan began, "we face an unprecedented situation. The departure of humanity has caused system failures across our entire civilization." Counselor Vexstar stood up. "With respect, High Counselor, this is more than just system failures. Our entire way of life is falling apart." Murmurs of agreement came from around the chamber. Everyone had similar stories. Broken machines, failed communications, collapsed trade routes, and research projects that suddenly made no sense without human expertise. "What do you suggest we do?" asked Ambassador Morthen. "We need to contact the humans immediately," Vexstar replied. "We need to ask them to come back." Vexan looked uncomfortable. "I've already tried. Earth Command refuses to accept our communications. They say humanity has chosen a different path." "Then we send ships to human worlds," suggested another counselor. "We tried that too. Human space is completely closed to Council vessels. Their defense systems are active, but they won't communicate with us." The chamber fell silent. For the first time in centuries, the Galactic Council had encountered a problem they couldn't solve through negotiation or force. The humans were gone, and they had taken the foundation of galactic civilization with them. 6 months had passed since the humans disappeared, and Admiral Kethron stared at the worst military disaster in galactic history. The Peripheral Defense Network, which had protected the galaxy's outer rim for 300 years, was completely dead. Every warning station, every sensor array, every communication relay had gone silent within the same week. Kethron stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Altarian vessel Star of Victory. Around him, His crew worked frantically at control panels that barely functioned. The ship's main computer kept crashing every few hours. The weapons systems worked, but couldn't target anything accurately. Even basic navigation required constant manual corrections. "Admiral," called his communications officer, "we're receiving emergency signals from the Corvin border fleet. They're reporting the same problems we are." "What about the Valek squadrons?" "No contact, sir. Their command ship went dark 3 days ago." Kethron felt sick. The great galactic fleet, which had once been the pride of a dozen worlds, was falling apart. Ships could barely communicate with each other. Different species used completely different approaches to military technology, and the humans had provided the translation protocols that made everything work together. Without those protocols, the fleet was just a collection of individual ships that couldn't coordinate their actions. Worse, many of the ship's internal systems were failing because they had been upgraded with human-developed components over the years. "Sir," the sensor officer reported, "we're detecting unknown vessels approaching the outer rim. They don't match any known ship designs." Kethron rushed to the sensor display. Strange signals appeared at the edge of the galaxy, moving slowly toward populated systems. Under normal circumstances, the peripheral defense network would have identified these ships days ago and prepared a response. Now they were completely blind. "How many ships?" Kethron asked. "Difficult to say, sir. Our sensors aren't working properly. Maybe 20, maybe 200. Send a message to all fleet commanders. We need to gather every working ship and investigate those signals." The communications officer looked embarrassed. "Sir, our long-range communications are down. We can only talk to ships within a few light hours." Kethron closed his eyes and tried to think. The galaxy faced a potential invasion, and their defense. Forces couldn't even talk to each other properly. Meanwhile, on the medical research station orbiting Seption Prime, Dr. Yelana was dealing with a different kind of crisis. The Meridian Plague had appeared on 3 outer colony worlds simultaneously. The disease spread quickly and killed both Septians and Mantarians. Worse, it seemed to jump between completely different biological systems. Dr. Yelana had seen diseases like this before. Cross-species plagues were rare but extremely dangerous. For 2 centuries, the Council had relied on human medical researchers to develop treatments for such diseases. The Human Medical Consortium had specialized in understanding how diseases affected different alien biologies. "Doctor," her assistant called out, "we've lost another test subject. The experimental treatment isn't working." Dr. Yelana looked at the data on her screen. 3 weeks of research had produced nothing useful. The plague continued to spread, and they had no idea how to stop it. What did the human researchers do when they faced similar problems? She asked. Her assistant pulled up old files. According to these records, they used something called cross-species genetic modeling. They would compare how diseases affected different species and find common factors. "Can we do that?" The software for genetic modeling was human-developed. "We don't have access to it anymore." Dr. Yelana felt helpless. The humans had quietly become the backbone of galactic medicine. They understood biological systems in ways that other species didn't. When diseases threatened multiple worlds, human researchers always found solutions. Now, with the plague spreading to 6 more worlds, there was nobody to call for help. Ambassador Thawne of the Seption Union stood before the Emergency Council. Session with terrible news. His usually calm demeanor had cracked completely. Dark circles surrounded his eyes, and his hands shook as he spoke. "Fellow counselors, the situation in Seption space has become critical. 12 of our worlds are now under strict quarantine due to the Meridian Plague. Our medical teams estimate that without effective treatment, we could lose 30 million citizens within the next 6 months. The chamber erupted in worried voices. The Seption Union was one of the Council's most stable members. If they could fall to a plague, any world could be next. High Counselor Thex Ann tried to maintain order. Ambassador Thaln, what assistance do you need from the Council? We need medical researchers who understand cross-species diseases. We need the genetic modeling software that was used to fight similar plagues in the past. Most of all, we need the Human Medical Consortium to return and help us. The humans are gone, Vexan replied. We must find other solutions. There are no other solutions, Thalne said desperately. The humans were the only ones who really understood how to fight diseases that affect multiple species. Every other medical advance in the past century depended on their research. Dr. Zephyri, who had been quietly attending the session, stood up. Ambassador Thaln is correct. I've been reviewing our medical archives. The Human Medical Consortium published over 3,000 research papers in the past 50 years. Almost every treatment for cross-species diseases was based on their work. Then we'll develop new treatments, suggested Counselor Vextar. With what? Dr. Zephyri asked. The software tools we need are human-developed. The research methods we would use were created by human scientists. Even the basic understanding of how diseases spread between species came from human studies. The chamber fell silent. The truth was becoming clear to everyone. The humans hadn't just participated in galactic medicine. They had been the foundation that everything else was built on. 3 days later, the crisis deepened. The unknown ships detected near the outer rim had begun attacking remote settlements. Without the peripheral defense network, nobody knew how. Many ships were involved, or where they would strike next. Admiral Kethron managed to gather 47 working warships from 6 different fleets. It was the largest force he could assemble, but it was nothing compared to the hundreds of ships that should have been available. Admiral, his tactical officer reported, we've established contact with survivors from the Kepler-7 mining station. They report that the attackers used some kind of energy weapon that our shields can't stop. How is that possible? The survivors say the attackers seem to know exactly how our defensive systems work. They targeted the weak points in our shield generators. Hethron felt a chill. The galaxy's defensive technologies had been developed over centuries. The only way enemies could know their weaknesses so precisely was if they had detailed technical information. Sir, the communications officer called out, we're receiving a transmission from the lead enemy ship. Put it on screen. The view screen flickered, showing a figure that looked almost human, but wasn't quite right. The face was too pale, the eyes too large, and there was something wrong with the proportions. Greetings, Galactic Council, the figure said in perfect Council standard. We are the hegemony of perfected worlds. We have come to reclaim what was stolen from us. What do you mean, stolen? Kethron demanded. Your human allies took our greatest scientists and researchers 3 centuries ago. They used our knowledge to build your civilization. Now that the humans have abandoned you, we have come to collect what is rightfully ours. The transmission ended. Kethron stared at the blank screen, trying to understand what he had just heard. Sir, the sensor office said quietly, long range. Scans show at least 300 enemy ships approaching from multiple directions. They'll reach the core worlds within 2 weeks. Admiral Kethron realized that the galaxy faced invasion by an enemy that understood their technology perfectly, while their own defense forces could barely function. The humans had taken with them not just their expertise, but apparently the galaxy's ability to defend itself. The Council had treated humans as junior partners for 15 years. Now they would learn what it meant to face the galaxy's enemies without human help. The irony was bitter. Just when they needed humanity most, the humans were nowhere to be found. 1 full year had passed since humanity disappeared, and High Counselor Vexan stood in what used to be the galaxy's most important government building. Half the lights didn't work anymore. Emergency power systems ran most of the critical functions. The great council chamber, which once housed representatives from hundreds of worlds, now held only 12 delegates from the few governments that still functioned. Exan looked terrible. His blue skin had turned gray from stress. He had lost weight, and his formal robes hung loose on his thin frame. The past year had aged him more than the previous decade. "Fellow councilors," he began, his voice hoarse from exhaustion, "our search teams have returned from their mission to locate human settlements. Captain Mordex will present their findings." Captain Mordex stepped forward. The seasoned military officer looked shaken. His usual confidence had been replaced by something that looked like fear. "High Counselor, we have visited 47 star systems that contained human colonies or research stations. Every single location has been completely evacuated." "Evacuated how?" asked Counselor Vextar. "Are you saying they moved to other worlds?" "No, sir. I mean they're gone. Completely gone. Every human settlement, every research base, every mining operation. Empty." Dr. Yelana, who had joined the search mission, activated a holographic display. The image showed a perfectly maintained city on New Geneva, one of humanity's oldest colonies. "The infrastructure is intact," she explained. "Power systems running, environmental controls functioning. Even the gardens are being maintained by automated systems. But there are no people, not a single human anywhere." "That's impossible," said Ambassador Thawne. "New Geneva had a population of 12 million people. Where did they go?" Captain Mordex changed the display to show Earth itself. The blue and green planet looked normal from space, but something was wrong. "We attempted to land on Earth 3 times. Each time we were turned away by automated defense systems. The only communication we received was the same message at every location." The display changed to show simple text. "Humanity has chosen a different path. Do not attempt to follow." "That's all?" Nexon asked. "No explanation? No demands? No negotiation?" "Nothing else, sir. Just that message, repeated in every major galactic language." Dr. Yelana pulled up more data. "We detected massive energy signatures around several of the abandoned human worlds. The readings suggest some kind of advanced transportation technology, but nothing we recognize." "Are you saying they have ships we've never seen before?" "It's possible, sir. Or they might have developed completely new ways to travel between stars." Counselor Vextar leaned forward. "Could they have left the galaxy entirely?" "We don't know," Captain Mordex admitted. "What we do know is that they removed almost everything. Medical equipment, research data, manufacturing systems, even basic tools. They took it all." The implications hit everyone in the room. The humans hadn't just left. They had planned their departure carefully, removing every trace of their advanced technology from the galaxy. Meanwhile, the economic collapse continued to spread. The Valek Trade Federation had lost 70% of their revenue. Entire industries that depended on human consumers had shut down completely. The crystalline hegemony, once wealthy from selling art to human colonies, now faced complete financial ruin. Trade Minister Kailara stood in her empty offices, looking at reports. That showed the scale of the disaster. "Unemployment has reached 40% across the hegemony," she told her remaining staff. "We have no choice but to begin emergency rationing." "What about other markets?" asked her assistant. "Can't we sell our bioluminescent art to other species?" "We've tried. The Zephyrians find our art disturbing. The Mantarians say it makes them sick. The Altarians won't even look at it. Only humans ever appreciated what we created." Similar conversations were happening across the galaxy. Species that had built their economies around human trade were collapsing. Even worse, the humans had been major suppliers of basic goods that other worlds depended on. The Seption Union faced starvation because human agricultural worlds had provided 60% of their food imports. The Corvan Empire's weapons factories sat idle because they had relied on human-supplied rare metals. Even the mighty Altarian fleet was grounded because human shipyards had provided most of their replacement parts. Dr. Salandra, the Council's head of technological development, presented her final report to the emergency session. The elderly scientist looked defeated as she activated her presentation. Fellow council members, I have completed a comprehensive analysis of our technological dependence on human contributions. The results are worse than our worst estimates. The holographic display showed the galaxy's technology network. Almost everything was colored blue, indicating human involvement. 78% of our critical infrastructure depends on human-developed technology. This includes power generation, communication networks, transportation systems, medical equipment, and basic life support on most space stations. How is that possible? Dexon asked. Humans were only council members for 15 years. That's correct, but they were involved in galactic affairs for much longer. Our records show that human scientists and engineers worked as consultants and advisors for over 50 years before they officially joined the council. Dr. Salandra changed the display to show a timeline. They started small, offering to fix problems that other species couldn't solve. They upgraded systems, improved efficiency, and integrated technologies from different worlds. Over time, they became essential to almost every major project. Why didn't we notice this happening? Because they never asked for credit or recognition. They worked quietly in the background, letting other species take public credit for their contributions. We thought they were just helpful junior partners. Terrible truth was becoming clear. The humans hadn't been junior partners at all. They had been the invisible foundation that held galactic civilization together. The invasion by the hegemony of perfected worlds had made everything worse. Without functioning defense networks, the Council couldn't coordinate resistance against the attackers. Enemy forces had captured 15 star systems and were moving toward the core worlds. Admiral Kethron, now commanding the last organized fleet in the galaxy, faced an impossible situation. His 47 ships were all that stood between the invaders and the most populated worlds in Council space. Admiral, his tactical officer reported, the enemy fleet has been joined by additional forces. We now estimate over 500 hostile ships approaching the Valak system. How long until they arrive? 6 days, sir. Kethron looked at his pathetic fleet. Even if every ship functioned perfectly, they couldn't hope to stop 500 enemy vessels. But most of his ships were barely operational. Weapon systems failed randomly. Shields flickered on and off. Even basic navigation required constant manual corrections. Sir, the communications officer said quietly, I'm receiving surrender offers from 3 more council worlds. They don't believe we can protect them. Kethron couldn't argue with that assessment. The great galactic civilization was falling apart, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. That night, alone in his quarters, Vexon tried one more time to contact the humans. He recorded a personal message and transmitted it toward Earth. My name is Vex Ann of Valak. I was High Counselor when your people left the Galactic Council. I want you to know that we understand now. We understand what we lost when you departed. We understand that we never valued your contributions properly. If there is any chance for negotiation, any possibility of reconciliation, please respond. The galaxy is dying without you. He sent the message and waited. Hours passed with no reply. Finally, a single line of text appeared on his screen. Message: undeliverable, recipient unknown. Even Earth's location had somehow been erased from galactic navigation systems. The humans hadn't just left the Council. They had disappeared from the galaxy entirely, taking with them any hope of salvation. 3 years had passed since humanity disappeared, and the galaxy looked nothing like it once did. High Counselor Vexen sat alone in what used to be the Grand Council Chamber. The massive room that once held hundreds of delegates now contained only 5 chairs arranged around a small table. Emergency lighting cast long shadows across. Empty walls where crowd banners of member worlds used to hang. Vexen looked older than his years. His once proud blue skin had turned pale gray. Deep lines marked his face, and his hands shook slightly as he reviewed the latest reports. The Great Galactic Council had been reduced to an emergency survival committee representing the few governments that still functioned. High Counselor, said Dr. Yelana, one of the only other officials still present, we've received confirmation that the Mantarian Collective has withdrawn from the Council completely. They're focusing on protecting their remaining 3 worlds. Vexen nodded sadly. The Mantarians were the 7th major civilization to abandon the Council in the past year. Most species had decided to focus on their own survival rather than try to maintain galactic cooperation. What about the Seption Union? Ambassador Thawne sent word that they've lost contact with half their worlds. The Meridian Plague has spread to 26 systems now. Without human medical expertise, they can't develop effective treatments. The plague had become a nightmare that consumed entire civilizations. What started as an outbreak on 3 worlds had grown into the worst pandemic in galactic history. Species that had relied on human medical researchers for centuries found themselves helpless against diseases they couldn't understand. Dr. Yelana pulled up a holographic map of the galaxy. Large sections were marked in red, indicating systems that had gone completely dark. Other areas showed yellow warnings for various crises: economic collapse, infrastructure failure, or civil unrest. How many inhabited systems have we lost contact with? Vexen asked. Over 400, sir. Some destroyed by the hegemony invasion, others abandoned due to system failures, and many more isolated because the communication networks don't work anymore. Vexen studied the map. The blue markers that once showed thriving council worlds had been replaced by warning symbols and empty space. The great galactic civilization that had existed for thousands of years was dying. And the invasion? The hegemony of perfected worlds has captured 63 star systems. Admiral Kethron's fleet was destroyed at the Battle of Rigel Station 3 months ago. We have no organized military resistance left. The invasion had been a catastrophe. Without human-developed coordination systems, the galactic fleet couldn't work together effectively. Ships from different species couldn't communicate properly or coordinate their weapons. The enemy had easily defeated forces that should have vastly outnumbered them. Admiral Kethron had died trying to defend Rigel Station with only 12 functioning warships. His final message had been simple: tell the Council that we did our best. Tell them that the humans were right to leave. Dr. Yelana changed the display to show economic data. The numbers were devastating. Galactic trade has collapsed by 92%. Most trade routes are no longer functioning. The few remaining commercial ships can't navigate safely without the relay networks. What about basic supplies? Food shortages on 18 worlds. Medical supply crises on 43 worlds. Power generation failures affecting over 100 systems. The infrastructure that supported galactic civilization has largely collapsed. Vexen closed his eyes and tried to remember what the galaxy had been like just 3 years ago. Bustling trade routes connecting hundreds of worlds. Scientific breakthroughs announced every month. Cultural exchanges that brought different species together. A sense that the galaxy was becoming a better place for everyone. All of that was gone now. In its place was fear, isolation, and slow collapse. Sir, Dr. Yelana said quietly, there's something else. We've detected unusual energy signatures in several star systems that used to have human colonies. What kind of signatures? We're not sure. The readings suggest massive construction projects, but we can't get close enough to investigate. Any ship that approaches those systems receives the same message. Humanity has chosen a different path. Do not attempt to follow. Vexan felt a spark of desperate hope. Are you saying the humans are still out there? It's possible. The energy signatures are consistent with advanced technology far beyond anything we've seen before. If the humans are building something in those systems, it's on a scale we can barely imagine. Could we try to make contact again? Dr. Yelena looked uncomfortable. We've tried hundreds of times, sir. Every attempt receives the same automated response. The humans have made it clear that they don't want anything to do with us. The hope faded from Nexon's eyes. He had spent 3 years hoping that somehow the humans would return and save the galaxy from its collapse, but that hope was foolish. The humans had made their choice, and it didn't include helping the species that had treated them as inferior for decades. A soft chime indicated an incoming message. Dr. Yelena checked her tablet and frowned. What is it? Vexan asked. A message from the Zephyrian Republic. They're requesting permission to surrender to the hegemony forces. Surrender? The Zephyrians have been council members for 800 years. They don't see any other choice. Sir, their defensive systems have failed completely. The hegemony has offered to spare their civilian population if they submit peacefully. Vexen felt the last of his strength drain away. The Zephyrians had been one of the founding members of the Galactic Council. If they were surrendering, it meant the end of everything. Send them our approval, he said quietly. Tell them to do whatever they need to do to protect their people. Over the next few hours, similar messages arrived from other worlds. The Corvin Empire announced they were retreating to their core systems and abandoning their outer colonies. The Altarian fleet formally disbanded, with individual ships returning to defend their home worlds. Even the crystalline hegemony, facing complete economic collapse, declared that they could no longer participate in council affairs. As the sun set on the council station, Vexan walked through the empty corridors one last time. He passed meeting rooms where important decisions had once been made. He saw offices where diplomats from dozens of worlds had worked together to solve galactic problems. All empty now. In the main archives, automated systems still maintain records of the Council's history. Thousands of years of cooperation between different species. Treaties that had prevented wars. Scientific discoveries that had improved life for billions of beings. Cultural exchanges that had brought the galaxy together. Vexan found the records from humanity's admission to the Council 15 years ago. He read through the documents, remembering how excited everyone had been about bringing a new species into galactic civilization. The humans had seemed so eager to prove themselves worthy of membership. Looking back, Vexan realized how wrong they had all been. The humans hadn't needed to prove anything. They had already been more advanced than most council species. They had joined the council not because they needed help, but because they wanted to help others. For 15 years, humans had quietly solved problems, improved systems, and made life better for everyone in the galaxy. They had asked for nothing in return except to be treated as equals. Instead, they had been treated as junior partners, useful servants who should be grateful for whatever recognition they received. The galaxy had learned too late what human partnership was really worth. Now, as galactic civilization crumbled into isolated fragments, the lesson was complete. Vexan turned off the lights in the archive and walked back to his office. Tomorrow, he would send the final message to all remaining council worlds. The Galactic Council was officially dissolved. Each world was free to make its own arrangements for survival. As he prepared the dissolution document, Vexan wondered if the humans were watching from wherever they had gone. Did they feel satisfaction seeing the council collapse? Did they regret not trying to save the galaxy they had once served so well? He would never know. The humans had left without battle, without threats, without even saying goodbye. They had simply walked away from a galaxy that didn't value them properly. In the end, that quiet departure had been more devastating than any war.